Having seen all the money that goes into getting a house, we can now talk about, well, how to make that decision financially, because the first rule of making any purchase is you should never buy more than you can afford.
Because only one thing counts in this life. Get them to sign on the line which is dotted. A, B, C. A always be B, C closing. Always be closing. Always be closing.
Where the rule of thumb that we're going to operate from here is what's called the 28-36 rule, which says that, and again, this isn't a hard and fast rule that if you try and pay more than this, someone will come out and stop you. It's just advice that if you want to have a healthy budget, this is what you should try and do, where you should put no more than 28% of your income, your gross income, towards your mortgage, and no more than 36% towards your total debts. So that's things like credit cards, student loans, your mortgage as well, and anything else that you may need to be paying off regularly. Where if you want to think about these things in terms of some specific values, we can talk about like how much you'd expect to want to pay on $20, $30, $40, $50, $60, $70, $80, $90, or $100,000 in terms of these types of percentages. Where, for reference, if we look at the costs from the last two examples, you can check these yourself, but they would necessitate incomes of $40,072 and $58,179 respectively. And seeing these things, let's take an example for the type of math you'd want to do here to make sure your budget is properly balanced. The average starting salary of a college grad in Florida is about $39,000. We want to find out what the maximum such a student should spend on their mortgage is, as well as what the maximum they should spend on all credit obligations overall. Where if you pay 75% of the maximum you can afford on your mortgage, what would the maximum amount you should spend on each month for all of your other debt be? So, this sort of budgeting thing is meant to be built on a month-to-month schedule because payments towards your house, your mortgage, are generally also run month-to-month. So for this, you have that median income. I think it was median or average. I actually can't remember now off the top of my head, but it's $39,000 in either case. Divided by 12 gives a monthly gross of $3,250. So if you want to figure out what our mortgage budget is, I will call that MB for short. That would end up being that value of 28%. Again, rule of thumb, not requirement. Still probably a good idea. 0.28 times that $3,250 to say that your mortgage should be at most around $910. Meanwhile, for the total debt budget, I'll call that TD. That would be 0.36 times that same $3,250, where remember that total debt budget is supposed to include the mortgage in there. So for this, when we get our value of $1,170, what that says isn't you have another 1,000 in debts you should budget for. It's you have 1,000 in debts, 910 of that should be your mortgage, so you're looking at about $250 in debt per month, which is probably a bit small for most of you. Which is why with that next part, we're talking about what might happen if you're not paying the total of your mortgage budget. If you only pay 75% of that, that means that what you'd be paying there is 0.75 times that $910 maximum. Maximum, again, not hard and fast rule, but $910 would give you $682.5 for your mortgage. That is $682.50 per month going towards your mortgage. That's not actually so bad. And as a result, the amount that you would put towards total debt other than your mortgage is that $1,170 minus $682.50, which is to say everything else like credit cards, student loans, car loans, any long-standing debt, you would want to keep at $487, and 50 cents. Again, if you go a little bit above this, the SEC is not going to raid your home and take away your assets until you get into a proper budget. But you do want to be careful. You want to be conscientious. You don't want to risk going too far over. And if you're under, it's not the worst thing in the world. But looking at what we're working with here, that might not be quite so reasonable. Anyway, the last thing we're going to look at for this section is a comparison in the same way that we talked about the comparison between renting a car, that is leasing, and purchasing. We'll talk about renting a living space, renting a home, renting an apartment, renting a condominium, versus trying to buy one as well.